The conversations and information provided are not intended to substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
The opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not reflect the view of Humana Military or the Department of Defense.
Welcome to the Operation Within podcast, where we talk about health and a deeper sense of well-being.
Operation Within is a collective initiative to optimize holistic health matters and nourish within community, within self, and within family.
Thank you for joining the conversation on Operation Within podcast. We are your hosts, Mel
and Marty, and our conversations are real, they're raw, and reflective.
These conversations offer meaningful dialogue on experiences within the military community, oriented to empower and strengthen health and vitality in our communities who serve.
We want to give a special thanks to Humana Military and our partners who have brought Operation Within to life.
Let's dive in.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of our Operation Within podcast with Mel and Marty. Once again, I am riding solo today. Mel she's prepping for her different conversations that she's going to have with some of our teammates. But today, I just have an opportunity to spend some time and chat with a friend of mine. It is something that just kind of happened. We didn't really plan it. But, life just happens, and today in the studio with me is Kimberly Andersen. She's a director of wellness. Welcome, Kimberly.
Hi. Well, thanks.
Yeah, and Kimberly she's married to one of the guys that I spent some time with, I ruck with. We knock out 10, 12, 20 miles sometimes. And along the way, we get a chance to get to know one another, and we've gotten close even during COVID and the pandemic. So, Kimberly, this is a chance to finally get to talk to you in person and really put a face to all these stories that I've heard about you on these long rucks. So what do you think about that? Are you ready for that?
Well, I think you're just saying that you're ready to hear the rest of the story, right?
The other side of the story.
The other side of the story.
No, it's again, I've heard a lot about you, and I know you and Jeff are doing so much for the veteran community. So this was an absolute win for us to get a chance to speak to you, and really get that perspective from Endeavors, right? What is Endeavors and how are they helping out the veteran community here in San Antonio? So I'm excited about our conversation today. I'm looking forward to just, again, learning more about you, learning more about the program. And really just, I was thinking about this as, we were kind of setting up the conversation. My daughter just went back to school in these last several weeks. There's a lot of things been going on these last several weeks around the world in Afghanistan, COVID, the pandemic going on. Right. Students are going back to school. My daughter, I dropped her off in Virginia. She's back in college. And, we're talking about she has these boxes and she has these bins that she's been hauling with her back and forth, right? Mm-hmm. They're up in the room. She brought them home, didn't even open them, right? It's kind of typical of a military family, right? You move from one duty station to another. You carry all this stuff with you. And for some reason, there's this one box or these two boxes. They're just kind of sitting there. You never open them. And you're like, no, but I need them, right? We need to move them with us. So anyway, my daughter, we're moving boxes back and forth and stuff that she hasn't opened. And I'm asking her, why do you need these? Like, well, I need these, Dad. I may need something from this box this semester. So here we are, loading the car. And again, but it's funny because it's a great analogy for, and I don't know if non-military families can relate to this, but I know as military members, I have a ton of boxes in my garage, some that even to this day, I'll go in the garage and I'll open. I was like, I'm going to close these back up because they're too emotional. They're too emotional to kind of talk about. So I just thought it was kind of funny that that's what we're going to talk about today is how do we unpack these boxes?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Those, there's so much that we in the past 18 months to 2 years, all of the events around the world and how we endured them are really synonymous with military culture. The separation from folks that we want to see on a regular basis and we can't, and having things and ways that we have to act now told to us that maybe aren't what we would want to do. You know, there's lots of things that we have been experiencing, that the culture as a whole has been experiencing, that military families are like, get in line. We've done this like 10,000 times. So, but that hard stuff, the hard things that we endure, we try to find a box to put them away in, because it's tough to kind of look at that all the time. So you put it away. We
do put it away. And I found myself in the garage.
You got some 100-mile-an-hour tape on some of those boxes?
I have duct tape on these boxes, and especially now that my daughters have moved away and I'm empty nesting. We're empty nesting. I'll tell you that looking at some of these holiday photos or little ornaments that your kids make when they were in second grade, man, they're tear jerkers. I find myself in the garage listening to music, and I'm like, man, this is great. I'm cleaning out the garage, and then I'm bawling like a baby just looking at these things. So it's like, I'm just gonna put it away, and I'll just put it in another bin. Make sure put an extra layer of tape, because I don't want to open this again, because this is really tough. But no, it's just I find that I think that's a great analogy for the conversation we're gonna have today is unpacking that box. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you that again, as we started these podcasts and having these conversations, we've come to understand that everyone is carrying a burden. Whether you're a military family member, or you're not in the military, you're the veteran, or you're just a supporter of the military community, everyone is carrying a burden, and these things are amplified by events that are going on in the world, like a pandemic, or like the withdrawal down in Afghanistan. Again, there's a lot of emotion, and there's a lot of stuff that's packed up or being unpacked,
right?
And you can see how the world is reacting to that. So I'm really interested in hearing how Endeavors and your office is able to maybe provide some resources to folks like me, that don't know how to deal with all these stressors, or I don't know how to channel my frustration. So I'm really looking forward to just kind of hearing what Endeavors can provide. But before we get to all that,
okay,
I want the audience. I want to get a chance to meet you, right, Kimberly Andersen,
for sure.
And so, how did you become affiliated with the military? So, tell us your story. How did it all start for you?
Well, it actually started. I'm kind of an unusual case. It actually started that I married a veteran. So my husband, I married in 97, and he was already a veteran of the first Gulf War in the Marine Corps. And I always used to joke that I got him when he was deprogrammed, except if you know a Marine, none of them are ever really deprogrammed. They're still Marines, right?
I can vouch for that.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. So I like to joke that I got him a little while later, but what I didn't realize in marrying a veteran at the time, there was no talk of what we carry with us what they carry with them after service, and how the relationships that they have after that are affected by that. And so, we had some bumpy years in the beginning. We both had our own traumas that we dealt with. And then along came 2009. We had a family. We'd been married for 13 years. Our kids were, 10, just turning 9, and 2, almost 3. And he got laid off from a position. He had gotten his business degree, was, doing well. And he got laid off, and I was so tired of him killing himself. He was literally killing himself. His blood pressure was off the charts. He was very sick. And I said, if you could do anything in the world, what would you be doing right now? The first thing that comes to your mind. And he said, I'd be back in the Marine Corps. And I was like, then you need to figure that out. And I turned around, I was like, oh my God, what did I just do?
You unleashed the beast.
Well, because anybody who knows Jeff knows, we don't give each other permission to do anything. Mm-hmm. We empower each other to follow our purpose, and that is probably why we've been married for as long as we have. But knowing that I was doing that, and that I wasn't a military wife, I didn't know what that meant. I just knew I had 3 kids at really tender ages, and I just told my husband that I was saying, go to a war zone. And I was so scared. And so he came back and he said, well, they don't take old Marines, but the Army does. So we ended up in the Army in field artillery.
So he was a Marine and then became a soldier.
Yes,
okay.
yes. And the thing is he had his degree. He could have gone in as an officer, and we talked about this at great length. He's like, I don't want to push papers. I want to lead these kids. Like, I know there's a purpose for me going in and as an NCO, which I didn't know all that lingo then. And he said, but it's really important that I have the opportunity to help them not make the same mistakes that I did. And he's like, I don't want them to just blow all their money on stupid stuff. I don't want them, I want to show them that there's purpose there and there's life beyond and all of those things. And I was like, absolutely. And I had no idea the pay difference at the time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I might have had a different response.
Yeah, it doesn't. Definitely, the pay scale is a little bit less probably than what he was doing.
But raising
before.
a family, I mean, we had a family with we had 3 kids, 2 dogs, and the both of us, and off he went in August of 2010, and we had never been apart for that long before. And
how long was he gone for?
He was gone. So he left August 2nd, and I didn't see him again until September. Ironically enough, it was our anniversary, September 20th, when he graduated from that warrior leadership. For folks, they had a training that was for folks who had already been through service before, and they were just coming back in. So it was a refresher course.
A refresher on how to be HUA, right?
Well,
how to get
for
that
him,
HUA back.
how to get HUA and lose a little bit of the oorah. And then he went over to AIT. So I saw him for a day and a half, and then left him, which was I didn't realize it's easier to just let him be gone than it is to see him for a day and a half then. And then we got him back right before Halloween, and off we went on November 4th to Fort Lewis, Washington. Our families were like, oh my gosh, could you get further? And I was like, yes, be quiet. They could have sent us to Alaska or Korea.
That's true. No, and it's there's you're alluding to things where about I'm not used to the lingo and having to go to school and having to be apart and raising a family, and those are some of the topics that we've talked about previously on how do you cope. How do you deal with that? And as a new military spouse, what was that like? What was that like being by yourself?
So I actually, when people have asked me this before, the best thing I can compare it to is parenting. It's the hardest, most draining, most rewarding thing in the that I could imagine, right? Like that there's just no way that you can explain it to somebody in any way they would understand other than that it's the hardest, most rewarding thing, because if you really support your service member, then it is rewarding, but it's also so hard. And having a family and being in a civilian, space prior to that, ironically enough, he actually saw our kids more as a service member than he did working retail.
Yeah, that's actually odd. Because I know somebody in his position being involved with soldiers or Marines, and I know that is very time consuming, and especially with the mindset of he wanted to go mentor and really take care of the young soldiers, and I love that. I love that, and that's his personality. Totally. He'll give the shirt off his back for anyone, and he's really, really passionate. And what I do know is once he sets his mind to something, he's gonna do it.
Oh yeah, and because when he got to his new unit, oh my gosh, the old man jokes and because he had ribbons galore, and these kids are there with 3 ribbons, and they're like, what did you get that one in Vietnam? And giving him a hard time, and he's like, whatever, get out and push, let's see who wins, and that was one of the things he prided himself on. Ironically enough, a lot of the artillerymen we knew, ended up with shoulder injuries, lots and lots of shoulder injuries because they carry those rounds on their shoulders. You know, probably regulations are supposed to be a 2-man carry, but when you're trying to get that stuff off of the line and to the space that it's supposed to be on the fob, you just got to do what you got to do. So they ended up with a lot of injuries, my husband included, and that brought him to a medical. Oh my gosh, why did I just totally blank out on that? It brought him to getting med boarded out in 2015.
Yeah, and I think I know any job. I worked aircraft maintenance, and I work with munitions, and a lot of our work was outdoors. And you do lifting over your head, and it's just that constant wear and tear on your body. And when you are deployed, sometimes you just you do what you need to do.
Right.
So it's very conceivable that's why you see a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
Because you're just trying to get it done. You're trying to be fast.
Yeah.
You're trying to do what you need to do. So that's so you're a military spouse. You've got the kids.
Got the kids.
And I know Jeff deployed, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. He did. He deployed. He was in Afghanistan. He was at FOB Frontenac and FOB Passab.
Yeah. So right now, as a military spouse and the member is away, obviously in combat, in the family, what were some of the challenges that you had to deal with, while you were back in the States, while Jeff was gone?
Having a son who was 13.
Teenagers.
Yeah. I wouldn't even just say teenagers. I mean, our daughter was 12, but that really critical age for boys, I call it like the second puberty. Like at 13, there's just that critical time where I think they really need their dads. I had to teach them how to shave.
Yeah.
There was just a lot happened. And trying to, a lot of folks were like, well, I was a single mom while they were gone. It's actually, it's different. It's not that I was a single mom, because I was parenting with Jeff while he was in another country in danger, trying not to give him too much that it would take his mind off the mission, but give him enough that he was still connected to the family and still a part of their lives in a way that they felt like he wasn't gone. There was no, they still had an enforcer, right? That was tough. There are lots of stories that our son gave us. In fact, my friends would call every week, and we would have what we called the Saturday lowdown. And it's like, okay, what did Noah do this week?
It's like journaling, but via conversation. All right, so what are we doing, and what's going on? And I can tell you from the military member's perspective, and for the audience that's listening, if you have been deployed or you've just done are on a remote assignment for a year, it's very difficult, and you're trying to call home, check in on the kids, check in on the house, just make sure that the family's okay, and you try not to get into a fight, right? You try not to argue over the phone, because these phone calls, like, you're right. I just want to give you enough, but I don't want to overwhelm you, because I know you're doing what you're doing. And I can tell you, for me, Patty, my wife was always really good about, she never burdened me with anything. She was like, the girls are good, but there's a hurricane coming to North Carolina. Yep, we're fine. We're going to evacuate. I'm like, but there's a hurricane. Yes, I know. And it was one of those things. I'm like, there's literally a hurricane about to hit you. And, but she was always more worried about me staying focused instead of me worrying about what the girls were going through, or, hey, my baby had a asthma attack. She ended up in the emergency room. They had to, put her on life support. What? Like, what? Well, I need to know that. They're
I got baptized that real quick, because we had to put our dog down of 15 years that Jeff and I had our entire marriage. He had doggy dementia, and the day that Jeff left, he licked all the hair off one side of his body, and he was so out of it, he wouldn't let me put any salve on it. He was biting me, he was biting the kids, and I took him to the vet, and the vet's like, he is so stressed out, and there's just not a way you're going to get him back from this. And I had to put him down.
Yeah. Oh.
But Jeff had just left the day before. And it was, when do I tell him?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to tell him in the 5-minute MWR phone call he gets in Manas, and I'm not going to tell him while he's traveling, and I'm not going to tell him when he first gets there, because that's the most dangerous time. So when do you tell him? So I waited 3 weeks to tell him, and I told him, and he's like, well, oh my God, when did that happen? 3 weeks ago. And he was so angry that I didn't tell him. Yeah. And I was like, when was I supposed to tell you?
There's no playbook for this, right? We're just making it up as we go. And
right.
I said life support earlier. It's ventilator. Is that a life support when you put on a ventilator?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So my daughter stopped breathing. So they had to freaking get her to breathe. And
it's called intubation.
So I'm like, and again, I wanted to know. And she's like, well, you were busy and I didn't want to call you. And this was before, in social media. I think there was like Yahoo Messenger, but same thing. We didn't have a direct line. You got your morale phone call and just kind of go with it. But so again, we're unpacking these experiences, right? We're unpacking the experiences as, you're affiliated with the military, you're a spouse, you're the member has deployed, you're dealing with all these things. And again, these are the things we carry with us for the rest of our lives. And even as we continue to, we enter, we begin our own careers, right? But these are great stories and great examples of how can I use my experience and how can I give back to the community, right?
Well, that actually brings up a really good point. How I got involved in this, I became very passionate about not just veterans. I felt kind of like Jeff had that covered, but the family members, because when Jeff transitioned out of the service, and that's what we call it, if you're not familiar with that, when a service member moves from the service to the civilian world, where they get a job that's not DOD or involved, still serving their contract as a service member, it's called transitioning. And I feel like that's like the theme of our life from 2010 to now is transitions. And some transitions can be really, really deadly.
How so? So please expand on that.
Well, a lot of service members and like first responders, they're transitioning out of this role that they have been in their life that is wrapped up in their identity. How do they separate that and move on and find a new identity? And some folks, that's really tough. And I say deadly, it's deadly to marriages. A lot of the folks that we know and were served with, that my husband served with, their marriages didn't make it. They didn't make it past transition. And there's a lot of reason for that. And I saw that, Jeff was very classic post-service military. He had 7 jobs in the first 3 years. He experienced a very quick and intense progression in his PTSD symptoms. And as a family member, that's really scary, even when you have some information. But because of there are so many things that happen inside of that transition as a family, as a service member, as a spouse, as a child, all of the things that are rolled up into what's happening, it's very difficult to manage. And I can see why marriages fail in that. And we're really just too stubborn to let it go. So I wasn't going to let it go. First of all, I knew who he is, and it wasn't the guy that was experiencing those symptoms and what I was seeing. And so it was really important to me. And one point I asked for the keys because he was very triggered and in a moment, in great intensity. And it was in front of our daughter. And I said, let me have the keys. And he said, so you're going to leave me? And I said, I will never leave you. I looked him straight in the eyes. But right now, we both need to stop and breathe and come back to a place where we can talk. And I knew in that moment that it wasn't him, and that I had to figure out what that place was, and how were we going to find our way back there, and how was I going to support him to do it, because I couldn't do it for him, but I needed him to do it. And I realized that without information and without support, spouses don't have the resources to stand in that space and hold that space for that service member who's experiencing some kind of injury, right? Whatever that injury is. It's really important that this family is supported through that space, because they really are the area that healing can move forward in.
Yep. And that's, yes. And first of all, thank you for sharing that. And as you're sharing this experience, I'm guilty of it. It's hard to communicate how life transpires, and it's something simple. It's an image on a TV or a smell, and folks don't realize that it's how a smell, something will, or a song will take you back. A song isn't necessarily a time period. It's a location. It's an experience. It's good. It's bad. It's whatever. But it's hard to explain to people what's going on. What are you feeling? I don't know. I don't know. Well, why are you, yelling, and why are you postured like you want to hit something? I don't want to hit anything. So it is, I know sometimes it's scary for families. And again, without those resources and knowing how to just communicate to that member, I can see where it's very, very difficult. And again, and this is where not knowing how to unpack the pain, or not knowing how to unpack hey, I need you to be here. Like I need you to, and being direct with the military member. So again, thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. And again, and as I'm reflecting back on my career, and I'm thinking, man, I mean, did I ever do that? And how did my family kind of get me back to center? I think they're still trying to get me back to center, but I can be difficult sometimes, but it's just really hard to explain. It's really hard to explain. So
yeah. Well, and I don't think it's the family's job to get you back to center. I think it's just our job to stand in the gap until you find your way back.
I love that. Stand in the gap. And you need it is I mean, it's a team sport, right?
Well, it is. I think one of the greatest things that I've learned on this journey of becoming the wellness director, and it's been a journey, is that the person I married is no longer just my spouse. The person I married is a soldier, a Marine. He's somebody who's living with an injury, and he's my spouse. I fill 3 roles. I'm a spouse, I'm a caretaker, and I am that person sometimes who's the enemy. And it's not because he wants me to be, but it's because when he's that soldier or that Marine stuck in that injury, that's who I am. And understanding that moment is not, I'm not dealing with the person I married, and he's not dealing with his wife. We are in a completely different space, is what allows me to be a wonderful spouse, and him and me to see him as my spouse, and to move out of that caretaker position and to allow him to find that healing in the ways that are best for him, and allow me to find my healing in the ways that are best for me.
Yeah, I love that. This is again, and earlier you alluded to the healing has to come from within. And again, this whole initiative, the Operation Within initiative, and again, Humana and our partners, Team Red, White, and Blue, Wear Blue, Run to Remember, Mel Marie Yoga, and all the number of partners that have come together, right? Endeavors. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of resources out there,
absolutely.
Right? How do we harness these resources, right? Because Team Red, White, and Blue, the organization I represent, we're really good at promoting that physical and social activity. Mm-hmm. Hey, we're going to get you out. We're going to get you moving. Mm-hmm. I'm broken. It's okay. We're going to walk 10 minutes. We're going to run 20 minutes. Doesn't have to be fast. Or if you want to, really
yoga.
Cycle yoga. So we're going to provide those avenues. But we are not postured because we're volunteers, and that's not what our role is. We're not postured to do that counseling or saying, "Hey, I really have a problem." We have agencies we can refer them to, like Endeavors. But again, it's that's why I love this initiative with the Operation Within, is because we're taking the strengths of all of the multiple organizations within San Antonio, within the state of Texas, and then how can we provide an avenue for our families, not just the family members as well, and how do we give them these resources to cope with these stressors?
Right.
Hey, we we've had a family member with suicidal ideations. How do we address that? Not the, hey, you're a guy, you need to just suck it up, right? Embrace the suck.
Right, yeah.
No.
Let's
talk. Let's see what is triggering these emotions, right? Because it could be maybe because I moved 10 times and I don't have a steady, I don't have friends.
Yeah. Well, or it could be that, and this is one of the things that really drove me. So our own transition, Jeff moving into the space of helping veterans himself at SAM Ministries, he worked with housing veterans, and I am that detective. I am that puzzle solver, and was able to get my degree in public health, which epidemiology and disease control is all about solving puzzles. But really my passion was for solving the puzzle of helping veterans and their families make it through transition and beyond into a place of wellness overall. And so seeing why are veterans homeless? How do they get there, right? There were two really big factors. Were their relationships, did they lose their relationship with their spouse? Or were they over-medicated or addicted to opioids? So those are like the two really big factors that Jeff and I both noticed just in our own very anecdotal way of the folks that he was dealing with here. And I just continue to go back to the place where if you can and it's not about keeping every family together. I understand there are unhealthy situations that are not good for both parties. But if you can keep that support system surrounding that veteran and that family member, it's going to end up much better overall for everybody, including the children, if there's any involved, and so forth.
So obviously, this is the space you've researched. Again, say I was like the detective. So tell me about the beginnings with Endeavors. How did you find your way into this organization and then into the position you are now as a director of wellness?
So getting my degree, one of the prerequisites was becoming an intern. And so I actually sought out an internship at the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic at Endeavors. And that's where I got started. And I knew about it because I was in a peer resiliency group, a spouse veteran resiliency group out of University of Texas at Austin, Dr. Bora's. And it's a fantastic veteran spouse resiliency group, is a fantastic piece of the Texas Veterans Network. That was another little plug for them. But I started with that, and we were having the meetings there at the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic. Got to know the outreach director, and she said, "Well, what do you do?" So I said, "Well, I'm actually looking for an internship." And she's like, "Come and intern with us." And I was like, "Okay, but I'm not a social worker." She's like, "Oh no, that doesn't matter. You know what you know, and I actually think you'd be great to speak about our program and to learn about it." Absolutely bought in. So was able to go and work with the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic, set up some life skills classes, was really enjoying that, and met their director, Dr. Jill Palmer, at the time, and I found out at the end of my internship that they were working on this special project. And Dr. Palmer had read my research paper and had said that she wanted to include me in the special project, but she couldn't tell me exactly how at the time, but to be looking for, a job offer and blah, 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 right? I was so excited because that was absolutely where I wanted to be. The mission of how Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic helps veterans and their families is that they, regardless of discharge status or ability to get childcare or transportation, they can help post 9/11 veterans and their family members, any designated family member. So that family member doesn't have to be a DEERS family member. It's any designated family member get the help that they need for some short-term events. So was really excited, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to be working with the Cohen Clinic. And then she said, we're actually designing a veteran wellness center. And I was like, what? And then when she started telling me about it, I was even more excited and thought, how did I just land my dream job? So being able to work with Endeavors to put together a place where we can actually serve veterans and their family members in every area of wellness. So it's mind, body, connectedness, spirituality, environmental, economic, and knowledge. And those are our pillars of wellness that we work on, but really it's about all of the folks that we have collaboratively under our one roof to serve veterans and all of their needs. And so really excited to talk about that.
Man, I tell you, that is amazing how it's funny how life just timing, everything's about timing, and life is all about timing. And sometimes these opportunities are just presented, and I think we just need to be ready. Sometimes we need to be ready to strike when we least expect it. And something that jumped out at me as you're talking about Endeavors and this organization, or at the Cohen Clinic, you talked about their services regardless of discharge status.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I know there's I guess a perspective, or maybe people are hesitant to reach out because maybe they were dishonorably discharged, or maybe they got into some trouble.
Other than honorable.
So can families or military members in that status, can they get helped?
Yeah. So one of the things that I love about Endeavor's mental health programs, so Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic is one set of our mental health programming, and it's for a more short-term 8 to 12 sessions. And then we have our Veteran Wellness Center mental health and behavioral health programming. And our Veteran Wellness Center is statewide, and through TVC funds, we serve any era veteran who has chronic or long-term mental health or behavioral health conditions and co-occurring. So co-occurring means that you may have a substance use problem as well as bipolar or substance use and PTSD. Often folks don't treat those co-occurring, and it's difficult to get treatment. But any era veteran is also a big piece of that, and regardless of discharge status. And that's because this is the thing, folks. If you have a long-term mental health condition, the chances of you getting in trouble while you're in any area of your life are pretty high. So it's not something that, when we look at the population that we're serving, we want to remove as many barriers to care as possible. So we're going to make sure that you can access the care. Our services with the Veteran Wellness Center, behavioral health services, are completely virtual. And if you don't have access to virtual, we will overcome that and have in several different ways. The Stephen A. Cohen Clinic, they have virtual and in person, and they'll get you, if you're doing in person and need a ride, they'll get you an Uber within 20 miles. Childcare, make sure that the Stephen A. Cohen makes sure that there's childcare on site. As long as you register ahead of time, you got that. So there are so many ways that we remove those barriers. One of the other pieces of that is that we aren't just looking at one area of your life. At the Veteran Wellness Center, and as it's moved over all of our Endeavors programs, we want to make sure that if you are seeing us, are you housed? Do you have food stability? Are you employed in the area that is serving your purpose and serving your values? So making sure you're not underemployed, or making sure you're employed in an area or receiving the help to get the education that you need. So all of those are areas that Endeavors can serve. So financially, with housing and with food and with mental health. Now we're going to be opening in October a gym that will ensure that folks can have access to a gym and those services with fitness classes like yoga, Tai Chi, and spirituality classes like that, mindfulness as well, and removing those barriers as well.
That is exact. And again, those are the resources that, for an organization like ours, Team Red, White, and Blue, where we can actually guide and share that information with some of our members that are looking for something a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And I think it was last year in 2020, I attended a workshop. I think this was before COVID. I think it was before COVID. Yep. But I think it was a veteran workshop, and it was I think they were getting some tips for resumes, and they had a panel of the different VSOs in San Antonio. And I got a chance to represent Team Red, White, and Blue and talk about kind of what we did. And I remember sitting there, and I remember when I transitioned. Transition was difficult, just like every the other veterans and most families. And one of the struggles I had was just finding a job. I was trying to be employed, and I'm like, man, I'm credentialed. I have a degree. I've managed, billions of dollars of resources, led people. I'm like, why won't anybody hire me? And what I shared with the panel while I was a panelist, and I was sharing with the group, is I was actually able to land a job. I found a job on a walk. Mm-hmm. I was walking a Tuesday night walk, Thursday walk, and I was able to network with folks that are plugged into the community. Right. And I was able to actually learn more about the culture of these different organizations. And then I'm like, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong, because LinkedIn and some of these other virtual trainings are great. They offer some good information. But how do you tap into the culture of the organization? Because you're beyond qualified, but who's to say that if you didn't intern at the Cohen Clinic, right, that you would have landed this job? Right. They have to know your work ethic and they do. Make sure you're a good fit. So I remember sitting as a panelist, and I remember sharing that with the group, and why I'm so passionate about the veteran service organization in this space is because I know that we're doing a good job, and there's a lot of ways that we can provide information to our service members. But there's gaps. There's also gaps of information, sure, and there's some bad information out there where it's like, Cohen doesn't do that. You need to go to this other organization. And again, because we don't know, right? So we don't know, we dismiss it. But based on what you're sharing with us, Cohen, the Endeavors, right? They offer so many resources, from the physical to the emotional, right? Mm-hmm. And the mental, and even you talking about food and even knowledge. Mm-hmm. How do I learn more about what I'm dealing with? And how can you help me unpack this box? Right.
Well, and that's one of the great things is that Endeavors, both the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic and our Veteran Wellness Center, collaborate together to hold just classes for the community. It's not clinical. It could be clinical. It's just supportive to provide information to better your wellness. So the way we define wellness isn't with massages and green smoothies. Although those are awesome, and trust me, I love a good massage, and I'm not sure about the green smoothies, but we define it as becoming aware of and making choices towards a more successful existence. And that means that, like us sitting down here today, your listeners turning on this podcast, that's a choice they made for some wellness. That's a wellness choice. They're going to be more successful at the end of this than they would have been before this because of some little piece of information that they heard. Drinking some water versus having a soda. It's a bit of wellness. But acknowledging each of our choices that we make in everything we do as it's moving me towards wellness or away from it. Not judging, is this good or bad? And that's the big thing, right? And so being able to have classes and gain knowledge and little pieces to just better your wellness every day in whatever area that you're wanting to work on? What's out of balance?
It's out of balance. And again, everything is about balance. It's amazing. And I know as when we leave here or as we wrap up our conversation, we're getting, we've had this amazing conversation. We're getting ready to wind down here. So how can people find more information about Endeavors or the Cohen Clinic? Where can they go for more information? Is there an app? Is there a website, something you can provide?
Yeah. We have our website, endeavors.org. And you can go there. You can find out what we do. Endeavors has a lot of services, but when you go under what we do, you'll find the Veterans tab, and you'll be able to see all the different services we offer for veterans and their families. You can also see how else we help in the community, because it's not just about veterans and their families. We are truly a community partner, and we work in emergency services with the hurricane that just happened. Our folks are getting geared up and ready to go to help in the hurricane, and we have lots of different ways that we serve around the community. But if you go to endeavors.org, you can find out how we can serve you. You'll also see that we'll be updating our building on Days of Alla Road is getting ready to open. We have to keep pushing it off because of COVID. It's making me crazy.
Yeah.
But we are going to be doing our grand opening on Veterans Day this year of our brand new building that houses our military family clinic, the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic, and our Veteran Wellness Center. And if you can also just call 210-866-3860 if you're in the state of Texas. We will make sure that you get to the right place to get whatever help you need. That's the Veteran Wellness Center phone number, and our folks there are very well trained to be able to get you to. You just tell them what you need, and we'll make sure that that we get you those resources. And if for some reason Endeavors doesn't have the resource specifically, we don't just say, okay, sorry about that. We make sure that we get you to the right resource. So it may be that, okay, well, I need an attorney to help me fight this VA claim that's not going through. Great. We have a list of those, and we can, set you up with one. It could be any number of things that we will make sure that you just don't end up calling all these phone numbers yourself, and that we help you get connected with the right resource.
And I think that's important because I've been guilty of, I have all this information, but I don't know what to do with it. Yeah, again, there's a great website. So now what? Like, who do I want to talk to someone, and I find comfort in when we do go on these walks or these rucks or go visit these panels, is the panel itself is 30 minutes, but the 30 minutes before and the 30 minutes after, when you're networking, you're like, oh, I didn't know that. Right. And people explain some of these resources. So I think it's important, that there's someone at on the other end of the line, because right now, just recent events with the everything going on in the Middle East and Afghanistan, we have a pandemic. Folks are still leaving the military. Folks are still joining the military. Folks are still leaving, the families behind, military families.
And there's a lot of our servicemen and women who left people over there in Afghanistan. Yes. And I'm not afraid. I think we all need to not be afraid to say that hard stuff, right? Call it what it is. And there is an increase in calls to the Veteran Suicide Hotline. There is an increase in our calls in the last 2 weeks, specifically related to the drawdown in Afghanistan and the feelings about that. And so if you are having those feelings, you are not alone. But you can call, like I said, 210-866-3860, and someone will, if we don't answer, it's because we're literally answering that many phone calls. Leave a message and we will definitely get back to you. Or you can call the Veteran Suicide Hotline. It's not just about, do you have the means at that moment? And if you are thinking about suicide, please tell somebody. That is a really finite answer and solution to a problem that is not. And that's what we believe at Endeavors, is that Suicide is really our problem-solving mechanisms, saying this is the last answer. But we just need to come around all of the folks around us and help us to problem solve differently. And so we want to be that space for you if you're in that space.
That's awesome. Well, Kimberly, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This conversation, again, we blinked, right? And we've gone through our entire episode, and I really appreciate I appreciate your journey, kind of how you came about, married to a Marine and a soldier. And I know that's a challenge in itself. But again, just really being that advocate. And I love how you said just standing in the gap, right? And I think that's important, where that's a good takeaway for the audience is we need we need a teammate, right? We need an advocate that will stand in the gap and can kind of help us, center and find balance, because we are, everyone is dealing with something,
right?
And we need to be able to respond accordingly. But, we started the conversation about, unpacking the box, and there's a lot to unpack. And for military families, veterans, and even supporters of the military, even now, and I think why the Afghanistan drawdown is so emotional. We leave pieces of us overseas. We do make friendships and connections with the locals. So it's emotional, right? But those are the decisions that we will reconcile on our own, and active duty military members, we press forward, and because that's that's what we do, right? And there's plenty of time after our service for us to kind of have these conversations of what if or what could have been, but it can be challenging. But this helps, being able to open up and being able to have these conversations. And again, to appreciate everyone joining us on this podcast. But
thank you so much. I thank you for having me and letting me talk about some of the resources that we can provide at Endeavors, and also just saying, if you need to unpack a box, just reach out to someone. It doesn't have to be us at Endeavors. Please reach out to someone, because there are a tremendous number of people out there that want to help and make sure that you get to unpack that box and it doesn't come flying open. So
that's right. So I just got to make sure that, so I'm mindful now. I make sure when I'm in my garage and I'm opening up, looking at old photos of my kids, I already know what's going to trigger me. So I'm like, I'm gonna leave that box alone. But no, I thank you for being here today. And I really,
well, next time, just say, what is that feeling? Why do I have it?
I'm going to call you next time. I'm actually just going to text you, be like, Kimberly, I need to talk to you about this box that I'm about to unpack. But anyway, it was great having spending some time with you, getting to know you. We'll continue the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and for our listeners, thank you so much. We will see you next time and on the Operation Within podcast. Until then, remember, keep it simple. Don't forget to eat and don't forget to smile. We'll talk to you guys later.